Right now, you're warm. And you didn't even have to try. The heat just runs. There's a coat by your door, one you didn't have to kill anything to make. There's food in your kitchen that'll still be there next week, no matter how cold it gets outside. Now take all of that away. Just your bare skin. And a winter so cold it could kill you in your sleep before you even woke up. That used to be normal, not for one bad season, for hundreds of thousands of years. Your ancestors lived through real ice ages, where giant sheets of ice covered entire continents, and the cold could kill a person in a few hours. And somehow, they made it. You're the proof. Every single one of them lived long enough to pass life down to you, which means every single one of them won a fight against winter they couldn't afford to lose. So how did they do it? How does a soft, hairless animal, one that grew up in the African heat, survive the coldest weather this planet has ever thrown at a human? That's what I want to show you, because this is one of the best survival stories we have, and almost nobody knows how close we came to not making it at all. The Ice Age wasn't just cold. Let's be honest about what they were facing, because the word winter makes it sound like a chilly afternoon in a campfire. It was nothing like that. The last ice age peaked around 26,000 to 19,000 years ago. Ice sat on top of Europe, Asia, and North America. The land was flat, frozen, and open, with nothing to stop the wind. Trees were hard to find. Food vanished for months at a time. And humans just aren't built for that. We come from warm places. Our bodies still act like it. We don't have thick fur. We don't have a fat layer like a seal. We can't slow our heartbeat and sleep through the cold like a bear. Take a person's clothes off in real cold, and they've got hours, not days. The body shuts down. That's the end. The animals around them were made for the cold. Mammoths had fur and fat. Cave bears could hibernate. Reindeer could just walk somewhere warmer. Humans had none of that. On paper, we should have been the first things to die. Wrong. Body, wrong place, worst possible time. But we had a brain that could plan and hands that could build the things our bodies were missing. That turned out to be enough. Just barely. Fire, the first answer. There wasn't one trick that saved us. It was a whole pile of them, and each one fixed a problem that would have killed them. It started with fire. Nothing works without fire, so that's where it begins. Humans had been using fire for a very long time, at least 300,000 to 400,000 years. By the Ice Age, fire wasn't a nice extra. It was the whole thing, and they were good at it. Archaeologists digging up Ice Age fire pits in Ukraine expected to find rough little fires. Instead, they found carefully built hearths. One of them burned at over 600 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. When wood ran low out on the open land, they burned fat and bone instead. Fire gave them heat, cooked their food, hardened their tools, and added hours of light when the sun barely came up. But fire has a problem. You can't take it everywhere. Step away from it, and the cold is right there. So they learned to carry warmth with them. The needle changed everything. At first, it was simple, skins thrown over the shoulders. People were skinning bears for their fur in northern Europe at least 300,000 years ago. We know because of cut marks left on bear paw bones, right where you'd cut to pull a hide off clean. Those bear hides made windproof, waterproof winter cloaks, but a loose skin leaks heat through every gap. That's not enough for a real ice age. The thick showed up around 30,000 years ago, and it's so small it sounds silly. The sewing needle. A thin piece of bone or ivory with a tiny hole drilled through it. One scientist called it maybe the most important invention in human history, and he's got a point. The needle meant you could sew. Fitted clothes, sealed seams, layers, sleeves that close at the wrist. A blanket on your shoulders and a coat that fits are two very different things. The needle turned one into the other. Early modern humans may have had better fitting clothes than Neanderthals, which might have helped our kind through the worst of it. They didn't stop at fur either. Deer hide cut the wind and stayed soft enough for mittens and waterproof boots. And before heading out into the cold, hunters would rub animal fat, called tallow, over their faces and necks. It sealed the skin, held in heat, and stopped the wind from pulling warmth away. Simple, a little gross, and it worked. Out on the bright snow, there was another danger: snow blindness. The glare can blind you, so northern hunters carved thin slits into bone or wood and tied them over their eyes. The first sunglasses, basically, made of bone. Homes made from giants. Everyone pictures cavemen hiding in a deep cave. The truth is better than that. Out on the cold land in what's now Ukraine and Russia, there were no caves and barely any wood. So they used the one thing lying around everywhere: mammoth bones. At a site called Mesorich, people found round houses made almost entirely from mammoth bones and tusks. Skulls and big leg bones went into the ground as the base. Ribs and tusks curved up to make the frame. Hundreds of bones in just one house. They were sunk partway into the ground and packed with hides, moss, and earth, which held the heat well enough to keep a whole family comfortable. The biggest one is about 18,000 years old, right in the coldest part of the Ice Age. Some of these homes even had a cold trap doorway, the entrance dug lower than the sleeping area. Cold air is heavy, so it sank down into the doorway and stayed there, while warm air rose to where the family slept. They figured that out tens of thousands of years before anyone wrote it down. They also used snow. Pile thick walls of it around the shelter, and the inside stays close to freezing even when the air outside drops to 30 below. Long before anyone perfected the igloo, people already knew that under a snowbank was far warmer than out in the open. Beating hunger. Staying warm keeps you alive tonight, but winter's slower killer is hunger. For months, there was almost nothing to gather and not much to hunt, so they got very good at saving food ahead of time. When they made a big kill, they didn't just eat it, they saved it. The cold did half the work, freezing meat after a hunt so it kept for later. They smoked meat, dried it into jerky, and stored dried fruit. They dug pits into the ground and used cool underground cellars where the earth kept food cold and safe through the winter. There's even evidence they weighed mammoth meat down and sank it in cold ponds to keep it fresh longer, like a natural fridge. None of this needed power. It couldn't go out like a freezer in a storm. And they wasted almost nothing. Every part of an animal got used. The hunting was organized too. At a spot in eastern France, Ice Age hunters used fire and teamwork to push whole herds of wild horses and reindeer into a natural trap. Not once, but for tens of thousands of years. Kill big, dry the meat, save it for the cold. That plan is most of the reason they lived. They expected winter. Here's something easy to miss. These people expected winter. Their whole year was built around getting ready for it. We're the ones who get caught off guard. We assume the power will come back on. When a bad storm hits, we're surprised. They were never surprised. And they used each other. Way more people lived under one roof than we'd ever put up with, in way less space. That was on purpose. Body heat is a real heat source when you pack enough people close together. The person with a room to themselves wasn't lucky. They were cold and exposed. It was usually the ones living alone, especially the old, who died first in a hard cold snap because there was nobody next to them to share warmth. The strange and desperate. In the worst winters in medieval Europe and Russia, peasants brought livestock, cows and sheep, right into the bottom floor of the house. The animals gave off a huge amount of heat that rose up and warmed the family living above them. You basically lived on top of your own furnace, and the furnace was a cow.
Sometimes the cold went so deep that people's bodies adapted. The Yagan people at the southern tip of South America lived somewhere freezing while wearing almost no clothes. To survive that, their bodies ran hotter than ours and made more heat from the inside. And then there's the strangest idea of all. There's a chance some early humans got through winter by hibernating.
At a Spanish site called the Pit of Bones, scientists studied early human ancestors from around 430,000 years ago. The damage in their bones comes in cycles. Seasonal marks, growth that starts and stops, the same pattern you see in animals that hibernate. The scientists suggested that without enough fatty food to get through a brutal winter, these people might have gone into caves and slowed their bodies down into a kind of deep sleep to wait it out. It's not settled. Plenty of scientists argue against it. But the idea is strange enough that serious people are still arguing about it. We forgot we won a war. Here's the part that gets me. In a couple thousand years, which is nothing on this timeline, we went from stacking mammoth bones into a house to tapping a button for heat. The deadliest thing our ancestors ever faced is now something we complain about on the walk to a warm car. We beat winters so completely that most people forgot it was ever a war we were losing. But every time you turn up the heat without thinking, every time you zip up a coat that fits, pull on boots that don't leak, or eat food that survived the season, you're using a solution someone bled for in the cold. They didn't win because they were stronger or faster or furrier. They won because they thought ahead, built together, shared warmth, never stopped trying. And that quiet, stubborn refusal to freeze, that's still in you.